There we go. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا بكم. شكرا أنكم اجيتوا. بتوقع الكل يجي وخبروا بعض. اليوم عندنا محاضرة من جامعة ريتشموند، صديقة عزيزة علي، راح أعرفها عليكم وتبدأ تعطينا المحاضرة. بدنا أسئلة منكم، بدنا تعليقات. احكوا أو اكتبوا بالشات. Welcome, Kelly. We are so happy that you are participating and sharing your research and your expertise today. This is the biology seminar series for the 2026, and we're very happy that you will be one of our seminar speakers. Now, I'd like to introduce Kelly first. Kelly Lambert is a behavioral neuroscientist interested in experience-based neuroplasticity. She enjoys teaching courses such as behavioral neuroscience, clinical neuroscience, and neuroplasticity seminar. In addition to publishing more than 70 research articles, Dr. Lambert has published 2 textbooks, Biological Psychology and Clinical Neuroscience, and 3 mainstream books. That's my favorite. Lifting Depression, a neuroscientist's hands-on approach to activating your brain's healing power, The Lab Rat Chronicles, and A Neuroscientist Reveals Life Lessons from the Planet's Most Successful Mammals, and most recently, Well Grounded. Actually, I loved Well Grounded, by the way. It was, I think, the best. So, and of course, she has a TED Talk. I remember that one very well because I was around at the University of Richmond, the Bermuda talk when you talked about the mice driving. And of course, she's at the University of Richmond in Virginia, and she is the recipient of the 2018 International Behavioral Neuroscience Society Career Achievement Award. I mean, I could go on and on about Kelly. I just want to share how I met her. So I was a fellow at the leadership college faculty at the University of Richmond, and I reached out to faculty at the biology department, and that's how I was lucky to meet Kelly. And we spent a lot of time together brainstorming, thinking of new ideas. And oh, by the way, Kelly also not just write books, she did a children's book. Remember?
It's
You
not
started.
published. I need
Not
help.
published yet. Okay, it's on the way. It was beautiful. I
I can't
remember
find a
that.
children's publisher, so
All right,
but I
so
have
that's
lots of
forthcoming.
ideas.
Forthcoming. So without any further ado, Kelly's going to speak for around 45 minutes, and then we will have a Q&A. And this is recorded, and it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel for the biology seminar series for those who did not attend or want to watch it again. So over to you, Kelly. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Rana. And your students are so fortunate to have you. And yes, I just cherished every minute of you being at the University of Richmond and appreciate that you reached out to someone in the psychology department, kind of psych bio. And yeah, we just found a lot of points of connection. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm going to try to share my screen. I have a new setup here, so hopefully everything, oops, didn't go to the beginning. There we go. Oh, I wonder why the title is not coming on. Let's see. There we go. Can you guys see that? All right.
Yes, we can see it. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So it's great to be with you today and to talk to you about one kind of small element of our research related, but one that's near and dear to my heart and will always be part of the lab's focus, and that's the maternal brain. Sometimes we take this relationship for granted, or this, I'm admitting people as I'm going here, but this remarkable event where you give birth to a whole extra living human being, or look at other animals too, and somehow our brains know pretty much what to do, more so for the non-human animals. I had to take classes and such to understand and to know what to do, but it's quite remarkable what this maternal mammalian brain, how it changes, transforms, and adapts to be able to take care of offspring. And just to put, let's see. my lab in context, as Rana said, I'm a behavioral neuroscientist, and we're interested in the largest kind of umbrella would be experience-based neuroplasticity. And it's this idea that the brain changes throughout our lives. As I tell my students, from the womb to the tomb, our brains are changing. And, it makes us, we need to be accountable for what we're doing with our brains. So often in kind of our advanced society, we're sitting in front of digital screens and maybe not interacting with the world the way our ancestors did. Maybe that's not the best for our brains. So a lot of our research looks at how we can build resilience against the onset of stress, maybe protect um, against depression and other psychiatric illnesses, just how to build emotional resilience so we can get through this life, with the highest quality as possible. My colleagues, as you see here, are often this laboratory rat. They're not humans, so you have to be careful about generalizing. But I've learned so much. As Rana said, I wrote this book, a whole book on rats, the Lab Rat Chronicles. And often they've taught me some pretty rich, deep kind of values and lessons in life. But we need to be careful, and I'll share something new coming up, a new book coming out, where I'm mindful that we need to look beyond the laboratory rat, scientists do, and look beyond the laboratory if we really want to see how brains thrive. I have a picture here of an area of the brain called the hippocampus. I know we've got lots of diverse interests
Kelly,
out here.
sorry to interrupt you. Your slides are not moving.
Oh, did it not? Oh, so I'm
We're,
still on the title page?
we're still on experience-based neuroplasticity picture.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah, I'm
where
right.
I am.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry. Oh,
yeah, that's fine. I'm just talking too much. Um, but just this brain area right here, can you see that? The brain area?
yes, 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 we can see it.
Yeah, just going to mention that that's the hippocampus, an area involved in learning and memory. And we can I love not a behavioral neuroscientist not only looks at behavior and the brain, and this just shows some of the beautiful cells of the hippocampus, neurons that we can stain, and we can look at a lot of different parameters of the brain. So one aspect of this neuroplasticity, as I mentioned, is how the mom's brain adapts and changes so that it can take care of this offspring. A lot of energy is invested in taking care of this offspring. So it's just really fascinating to see what happens to the brain. A little bit of history at the University of Richmond, where I was and where Rana was as well. This colleague was there. I was at another institution, Randolph-Macon College, for many years, department chair there, thought I would retire from there. But my friend and colleague, Craig Kinsley, was at the University of Richmond, and he was very interested in maternal behavior. And let me see, there's some people here I think I need to admit. And so when I joined the University when I moved to Richmond, Virginia, I was at the other institution, we started collaborating and he shared his interests. I was interested as a human in maternal behavior, but he shared his interest to learn more about not just how, okay, I'm not good at multitasking here, letting people in. Not just how a mom influences a baby's brain, but how this offspring influences the mom's brain. And we saw that as kind of a gap in research. Obviously, there've been a lot about a maternal rat being attentive to her pups and how that influences the pups. But what was changing in her brain for her to be able to engage in successful maternal behavior? And if you look across species, this maternal behavior is different in different species. I'm focusing on mammalian behavior, as you saw in the title here. But if you look at reptiles, a sea turtle like this, they just drop their eggs and go. So they're not really engaging in any maternal behavior. But once mammals started, they have these mammary glands and they're feeding their offspring, it gives this extended time of nurturing And, one of the big themes of looking at maternal behavior is thinking of this as the roots of empathy and sympathy and caring, nurturing, all the kind of best things that I think of as humans especially. So once these mammary glands were there and the moms could take care of the offspring, I'm interested in brains. It provided an opportunity of extended nurturing for this brain, whereas these sea turtles, they literally have to hit the ground running. They don't have mom to take care of them or feed them. It's really a rough, tough world for them. So this is, from an evolutionary perspective, unique. Its interest is not unique to mammals. Birds engage in this as well. Um, and other animals. We still letting people in here. Yeah, I think we're good. So the this researcher Paul McLean, he's had a big influence on me. He was at the National Institute of Mental Health. He's passed away now, but he was interested in looking at these evolutionary differences in maternal behavior and different species. So he had kind of a zoo-like lab in Washington, D.C. at the National Institute of Mental Health, and he looked at reptiles and mammals and such. And he suggested that there were three differences that really defined mammals different from like reptiles. And they were all related to this maternal brain or maternal behavior. And he said it was lactation, so the mammary glands to be able to feed the offspring, and also vocalization. And when the let's see, early mammals, if you think of just these little dinosaur-looking mammals, reptile-looking mammals almost, um, that were on the scene with larger reptiles and such, the moms needed a way when the offspring could kind of go away from them. They needed a way to know where their offspring were. So there were these little vocalization, so they could kind of hear them. And that was an early vocalization, which is big for communication. And then maybe a behavior you wouldn't suspect as being a defining behavior for mammals, and that's play. And play is one of my most, I guess it would be one of my favorite behaviors to look at in rats. They engage in rough and tumble play, RAT, rat play. And they pull each other's tails and they chase each other and they look like human children playing. And that's very good for activating the brain. And maybe there are exceptions, but I haven't seen lizards or turtles frolicking and play. So it does seem to be unique to mammals to kind of to rev up and to educate this brain. And I should also say that Paul McLean, he's known in the field of neuroscience for naming this system called the limbic system. And these are areas involved in emotion, and it's very oversimplifying to say it. These areas like the hypothalamus and the hippocampus and amygdala that are involved in emotion. So he's very well known, a pioneer in neuroscience in this country. I was able to interview him for one of my textbooks, and this was taken at his home, and I just cherish that memory. And he really shared with me, how the brain needed evolutionary tricks to be able to motivate moms to invest so much time in their offspring when there's not an obvious return on the investment. It's not like, oh, I invest this and then I'll get this amount of money. If you're talking about financial, this is very different. Relationship, meaning, reward. So the brain really needed to be all in. He wrote a book entitled The Triune Brain, where he was talking about kind of evolutionarily old areas of the brain, the reptilian, the neo-mammalian, and then the mammalian. And he did a good bit of research on squirrel monkeys. And squirrel monkeys they carry around their offspring that are about a third of their body weight when they're still carrying them around. Such a huge investment. So I had organized a conference before he passed away and had this artwork made to characterize this reptilian brain and the neo-mammalian brain, kind of like the reptiles, like the brainstem, and the early mammal is like the limbic system coming around here, and then the neo-mammalian with this cortex. So sometimes I get a little bit artsy. But he played a big role in our thinking about maternal brain. Really, sometimes I call him the father of the maternal brain, putting this on the map. And it was so fascinating to meet with him and to hear about this. So, with my new colleague years ago, Craig Kinsley, who was interested in maternal behavior, and my interest in neuroplasticity, we started to do some research with our friends, the rats. Um, and they, I don't know if you know that much about rats, but they're wonderful mothers. I would watch them in envy of how much they just knew what to do. They typically give birth to about 8 to 12 pups, and these are probably 7 or 8 days old, but they're little pink, hairless pups, completely helpless, dependent on the mom, and the mom gives birth, cleans herself up, cleans the pups up, and she'll crouch over them very gently so they can nurse. She seems to kind of keep track of where they are at all times. She has to groom them repeatedly. They can't eliminate or use the restroom or poop and pee without that stimulation. So she's got a lot going on and she doesn't seem to miss a beat. So this is Rattus norvegicus that we've done a good bit of work in. And these are quite old publications, but I thought I would share some of the findings with the rats, and then we'll talk more about bigger implications and humans and such. But again, looking at the mom, this is a rat mom carrying her pup. She's not eating her pup, but carrying her pup very gently. They have sharp teeth, but they do this so gently. And so we were looking at that area on that first slide, the hippocampus involved in learning and memory. And this is a picture of a neuron dendrite in a virgin rat, so with no reproductive experience. And these little branchy things coming off are called spines. Those are likely connection point. They are connection points with other neurons, and we have a lot of neurons, and so there's a lot of communication. But if you look at a lactating female with this reproductive experience, it looks, you don't need statistics. We use statistics and to quantify it and such, but you can see qualitatively that there are many more dendritic spines. So maybe more connection points in this area involved in learning and memory, spatial ability, maybe pattern identification would be important for her ability to be a good mom. And another thing that's probably influencing this is during pregnancy, we have a huge increase in estrogen and progesterone. And Craig Kinsley would also talk about the brain, would often talk about the brain marinating in these reproductive hormones and changing it. So by the time the young arrive, she's going to be interested. And we also looked at, sorry for this is an old figure here, but an area involved in kind of defensive behavior called the amygdala, fear, anxiety as well. And so here we were looking at the cells that were activated it's looking at immunoreactivity, the immediate early gene FOS and the protein it produces. So if FOS is present, it suggests that that area of the brain was more active or was active. And so our nulliparous, these are our virgin animals, they had more activation when we put them into an open arena, which is a little bit scary for a rat than this is primiparous, than the first time moms. So it seemed to be enhancing an area involved in learning and memory, and maybe subduing an area involved in anxiety or fear. We also did a behavioral test. This is from a Scientific American article where the artist did this. Our apparatus doesn't look exactly like this. But rats, they're nocturnal. They're going around at night. They sleep during the day. Seems to be safer for them. It's the way they evolved. So it's very bold of them to venture out in an open arm. So in this is called an elevated plus maze, and it's often used to measure anxiety. So if an animal stays in the dark covered tunnels, they're thought to not be as bold, maybe to be a little bit more anxious than the animals that were out on the open arms. And so we saw that the percent of time for the mothers, first time and second time moms on the open field was significantly more than the virgin females that kind of stayed hidden, suggesting that they had a little bit more anxiety. In this study, we did something kind of neat, just a fast little something. We were looking at some learning differences and such, and depending on when you're looking, the maternal animals did show some improvement. But then we had this open field, I've got my arms here, and the animals had to learn where rewards were. And there was one baited well for the reward. And we usually tested them one at a time. But I thought it would be interesting to look at their competition. So if you put two rats in there, could they navigate all the anxiety of being there with another rat and still keep focused on the task to get to the reward? And you see that multiparous, these are two-time moms versus one-time mom versus no-time moms, nulliparous, that the moms were much more better at kind of competing, navigating with that other person in there, eye on the goal to get the food prize. So I thought that was really interesting. And these were moms that had had the experience much younger. These were 13 months old. And rats, they typically don't live longer than about 2 years in our lab, but most of the research is done in very early adults because it's expensive to keep them in the lab. Um, we were also interested in their hunting behavior, and they will hunt for crickets. Um, and so we put a cricket in the open field, and the moms, it took a lot, they didn't take them as long to get the cricket, eat the cricket. So we're seeing that some survival behaviors, navigating the environment for foraging, reducing the stress, being able to hunt even. That seems to be mitigated or changed in the maternal animals, and you could see how that may make them a better mom. Something has happened in their brain. We saw the brain structure, at least in the hippocampus. And it's interesting to me, this is, if this will show, a video from, it's called Archive and Animal Behavior, kind of like a National Geographic documentary that was done. And this shows a rat where her world is very threatened. It's a flood. And instead of just getting out of there, rescuing herself, saving herself, she keeps coming back to the rat. So let's see, this will play. So they're living underground, in an urban setting, and it starts to flood. A pipe has burst or something, and she has found a safe place kind of higher up for her pups, and she just put one pup, but then she went back, the water rising, risking her life to take each pup back to safety. Um, this is interesting because there's no one there to really judge her if she just looked out for herself. There's no child protection services that are going to make her, penalize or arrest her or something. This is just her brain driven to rescue, to nurture, to make sure all of her offspring are accountable. This is pretty amazing for a rat and very much may be the roots of like I was saying, sympathy and empathy and nurturing and caregiving. Um, Rana, I don't know if you guys have access to Substack
I,
there.
I don't know. I mean, it's everything now is global. So I think
Yeah.
yes.
So
So I
this is
think,
kind
yeah,
of
go
all the
ahead.
rage here, where it's called Substack. And I just started one. So I only have one essay for Mother's Day. We had Mother's Day here week before last, and I launched the first one, the mother of all brains, similar to what I'm talking to you about just how amazing the maternal brain is. But this is a Substack. It's for free, and there are lots of journalists and scientists, and we just write essays. So it's not just little quick snippets. It's a real essay if you're interested in that. And I started with this story, thinking about how the brain of the rat starts to prepare for maternal behavior. Um, I noticed one day when I went into the lab, there was a pregnant rat, so she was about to deliver probably the next day. And I saw her gently pick up her tail and put it in her mouth and then scoot back to the back of her cage and release it. And I realized that she was seeing that pink hairless stimulus, which was her tail, as a pup. Her brain was starting to incorporate what a pup would look like and how she needed to retrieve it and take care of it. So I just thought that that was really interesting. I had AI kind of do something, so just gently would retrieve it and take it back to the nest. Also, thinking about how the brain changes, there's been Joan Morrell and some of her colleagues did research this where it didn't have a label there for the rat to read. Thank you, AI. But they would do something like this, where a mama rat could press a lever and to get pups, and they would just keep pressing and pressing and pressing and be sitting on this big, litter of pups, suggesting how rewarding these pups are at certain points of their lives. Now, before they deliver, if you put smells of pups in their cages, they retreat from it as if they're going, ooh, that they don't like it. But then all this marinating of the brain and these reproductive hormones, the changes from her body, by the time those pups are born, she's pretty much addicted to them and will press this bar. Now, they did some really interesting research where they allowed the rat to press a bar, the maternal rat, press a bar for pups or press a bar for cocaine. And when the pups were young, they would press the bar for the pups. But when the rat pups started to get a little older, maybe they're, a little mischievous and running around, they would go for the cocaine. So I don't know if that's true for human moms, but I know through adolescence, it gets quite stressful for moms. This is also really interesting. So I often take students to this wonderful primate park in Miami, Florida here, and it's called Monkey Jungle. And they have this beautiful outdoor area. And this is a capuchin monkey. And in this exhibit, there were 4 female capuchin monkeys and some other squirrel monkeys, but no male capuchin monkey. So when we walked in one day and I saw this capuchin monkey carrying this offspring, you can imagine we were confused because, let me repeat, there were no male capuchin monkeys in the compound. Upon closer, observation, we realized that this was not a capuchin baby monkey. It was a raccoon. I don't know if you have raccoons there or you've heard of a raccoon. There are these masked mammals that I also study. So her drive to be a mom was so strong that raccoon babies are called kits. She didn't kidnap. She kidnapped this baby and carried it around like a capuchin would properly carry its ventral carry its offspring. This was just amazing. It didn't end well for this, raccoon baby. There were actually 2 of them that had it because they weren't lactating. But I didn't show you the research that we did with foster moms. And when we looked at moms that were just rat moms that were exposed to pups without going through the pregnancy, they also showed some of the learning, some of the differences that we saw in the real moms. So maybe just being around those offspring, even though it's a different species, it activated and started to marinate their brains to act maternal. So you don't necessarily have to go through the pregnancy. Being around others, offspring, can also facilitate this behavior. At Monkey Jungle, we've done some research with owl monkeys. So this allows me to talk about another different species difference that's interesting. Rats are called, they're uniparental, just the mom takes care of the offspring. The dad are pretty much just dads are sperm donors, and they're gone. The mom is like a working mom. She's doing it all. Other species, like humans and owl monkeys, are considered to be biparental. The moms and the dads invest in raising the offspring. So this is a mom and a dad and offspring that's been around a while. I think this is the offspring actually. So they'll stay with their offspring for about 2 years, and the dads play a big role. Now it's fascinating to me that only about 3 to 5% of all mammals engage in biparental behavior. So the mammalians across the board are more of a single parent species. But we did some foraging tasks where they would associate certain designs with high value food, and both the mom and the dad, the parents, were better at foraging. So I'll just say that there. Uh, so that's primates. Generalizing and going and translating to humans, we know a good bit about what is going on with the maternal brain as during pregnancy and after. But some key kind of brain areas that are involved, the hypothalamus that is involved in motivation. This area called the preoptic area is kind of an aspect of that hypothalamus. And if that is lesioned in animals, they won't engage in the maternal behavior if it's damaged. So this seems to be important and is important for humans as well. The hippocampus that's involved in learning and memory, as we talked about, areas of the cortex, the prefrontal cortex, as you're planning and thinking and strategizing. A key area, the nucleus accumbens, is involved in reward. And as you saw those rats pressing the bar to get the rat pups like they would a drug of choice. This is playing a role in motivating the moms to take care of the offspring. So there are other areas as well. Cingulate cortex involved in emotions. Of course, the pituitary that is the endocrine gland that's not necessarily the brain, but connected to it is regulating these hormones, not only estrogen and progesterone, but other hormones that are involved, oxytocin, prolactin, other endorphins. There was a study that came out a couple of years ago in Nature Neuroscience that was interesting. They followed a human female throughout her pregnancy and did brain scans to show some of the cortex becomes thinner, other areas kind of beef up, and it's just interesting. The take-home point is not exactly where the changes are, but that the brain is continuously changing to try to adapt this oncoming little one and then to maintain that relationship. So there's a lot of brain sculpting that's going on. I'll skip that. Just from a sitcom that kind of took some of our research. We're also interested, I need to go a little bit faster now. In what I've described to you is the rats, when everything's okay, when they have the resources to take care of their offspring, when food is available, there are no predators, so everything's great. But in real life, everything isn't great all the time, especially for humans. There are threats, there's low resources, poverty, relationship problems. So I think it's important to think about when things aren't perfect. And so we designed some studies looking at kind of a rat model of poverty or low socioeconomic status, where usually the rats would have a little bit more bedding and paper towels for nests. And so you can't really see it here, but this would be thinner bedding, not so much bedding, and fewer paper towels. I didn't think this would really play a role in their ability to be a good mom because it seems so minor. They're still in this safe lab. And I will say that Molly Kent, who's now at another institution, Virginia Military Institute, helped out with this, and the student, Sammy Scarola, who is now a surgeon. So we did this, and we were looking at the mom's motivation. So this is a mom from the standard resource, and this is a mom from the low resource. And just we gave them a challenge where they have this barrier, it's kind of a new environment, and they want to kind of take their pups off. This traditional mom, she wants to gently take her pup to a new nest area. They're trying to figure out where they are too. And you see this other mom from the low SES, she just seems distracted, not focusing on the pups like the other mom is. And in fact, she drops that over them and uses them to stand on. So you get a sense of how distracted the low resources makes the mom interact. And that would probably be even worse for humans. Let me just go into the less complex slide. We also noticed that their growth patterns were compromised in the low SES poverty group. Their tails were shorter, their feet were smaller, they had more dander, and their fur took longer to grow in, and their tails looked like they had, just didn't look as healthy. We collaborated with someone at a nearby university who's in biochemical engineering to do scans of the vertebra of the tail and the foot, and we wanted to look at tendons and bone. Um, and just looking at this measure of bone in the tail, it's called trabecular separation. And so the more separated this is, the more porous the bone is and less dense and probably more vulnerable. And we saw huge differences. The blue are the standards, and the gray the poverty rats. And so they had more separation and more vulnerable bones. We also saw less healthy tendons. So it's not only affecting the brains, but their whole, as we said, from head to toe or head to tail impact. So it's important to understand how vulnerable this whole wonderful maternal offspring relationship phenomenon is when resources aren't there. And Kim Noble at Columbia University, she has a website, Baby's First Years, that you could look at. They did this amazing research where they were wondering if they could reduce poverty and if that would have an impact on the developing baby's brain waves. They were looking at EEG and kind of healthy brainwave patterns. And so they got approval. This is very difficult research to do in this country. I don't know how difficult it is to get approval where you are, Rana, but they got approval to give there were 1,000 moms that were all low socioeconomic status, so a certain criterion for that. And half of them, they gave $333 a month on a little debit card, and they could spend it however they wanted. So it wasn't like, here are diapers, here's formula, you have to use this. It's we trust you to determine how best to use this for your children. And the other, they got $20. So it was a big difference. And so they've been following these offspring for 4 years now, 4 or 5 years. And by the first year, they were seeing healthier brainwave patterns. By the fourth year, it was a little bit less, but super, super interesting. And she has a TED Talk that you could listen to if you're interested in that. And if maybe we can kind of start to wind down my new book, and you're the first people to see the cover. You see it's a mock-up of focusing on wild brains and not just laboratory rats and laboratory environments. I think it's so important that animals have a lot of hacks and secrets to share with us about health, and that's a whole different talk. But I had this wonderful artist who did some illustrations, some quirky illustrations for each chapter. And the chapter on parenting, he was comparing the sea turtle and the owl monkey. And this is a little artsy, and you're the first people to see something like this. But I wanted to, he sped up his drawing, and then I provided a narrative that I think will kind of capture what I've been talking about, and then maybe we can open up for some questions.
Brains that transform across pregnancy and beyond, shifting from self-focused to other-focused, recruiting resources with no guaranteed return on investment. But this is not the model for all animals. On a quiet beach, a sea turtle lays her eggs and leaves. No protection, no nourishment, no second chances for most. Survival here is a numbers game. Mammals took a different path. With the evolution of the mammary gland came time. Time to nourish, time to protect, time for brains and bodies to develop. The owl monkey is a striking example. A devoted pair, a tightly bonded family. Fathers carry the young, mothers nurse and monitor. For nearly 2 years, offspring are shaped through interaction. This kind of parenting required a brain makeover. Motivation, reward, sensory systems, emotion, memory, all recruited to nurture the next generation. And in that process, something else emerged. A brain that is flexible, sensitive, plastic, a brain shaped by experience. So when we think about intelligence, we might look not just to algorithms, but to the brains that evolved to raise other brains. And perhaps we can imagine a different kind of conversation. An early morning podcast, the sea turtle focused on place, where to nest, where survival begins. And the owl monkey focused on experience, on cuddling, beeping, responding to every movement, every call of her young. 2 strategies, 2 brains, 2 very different ways of shaping the future. Because the most powerful intelligence on this planet doesn't just generate code, it generates life.
And I thank Javier for his wonderful art. And that was him drawing, an actual human drawing. And I also would like to thank my students and the University of Richmond for all of their support. And I'll end there for some questions.
Thank you, Kelly. That was fascinating. I mean, you're a wonderful storyteller, as always, and you took us through all the complicated yet simplified in a way that we can relate to our everyday life. So thank you very, very much. You can see the
You're quite
responses
welcome.
from the students. Okay, so now we open the floor for questions. I'll just speak in Arabic for a little bit. يعني أكيد انبسطتوا وإن شاء الله فهمتوا الحديث. هل أي حدا عنده سؤال يرفع إيده وبيقدر يعمل unmute ويسأل دغري. وإذا بدكم تسألوا بالعربي أنا بترجم، ما عندي مشكلة. أو إنه بدكم تكتبوا إشي بالشات قولوا لي، بس يعني بنحب منكم أسئلة لأنه الموضوع يعني بخصنا كلنا، يعني بحياتنا اليومية، الدماغ والحمل والأم والدماغ الأم. تفضلوا. Let's see. Okay. Well, until they raise their hands or ask let me check everybody if anybody's asking any questions.
Yeah. Hello, Rana. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام. تفضلي. Go ahead, Dr. Arwa.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kelly, for this very interesting presentation. I just have a question. For those species where the father takes part in parenting, do you know whether their brains also change? The males?
Oh, the males?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have looked at, I won't have a picture of it, but there's a little deer mouse, a parameciscus called a California deer mouse.
Mhm.
There's a prairie vole. Both of those species, we've looked at the California deer mouse, and we see very similar effects as far as brain areas that are changing. We see a lot more sensitivity to oxytocin and vasopressin, the receptors.
Mhm.
We see the foster care and the California deer mouse. You just put a pup there and he's taking care of it. It's just such an interesting, different evolutionary strategies where the males are so invested in some species and not in others. And then, like the foster, there's alloparenting with aunts and uncles and such. So it really goes beyond just the mom that I focused on.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
طلابي في حدا تاني بده يسأل، يستفسر، يعلق، احكوا بالعربي، معلش ما عندنا مشكلة. طلابي. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question until some. So, no, what fascinated me, yeah, as you know, I always tie what we learn from animals We try to understand it and think it's similar or presume it's similar in humans to a certain extent. But I like to go further and look at society and how we believe that society and how it governs how we behave is biology. And that kind of projection, your research is questioning all of that, right? So, usually in the workplace, the way we live our lives in modernity, a woman who is pregnant multiple times is not considered the best for the work, right? And considered that she, what has she done? What skills does she have? And yet the research is pointing that her brain is the one that's multitasking, that's doing all these different tests that you see with rats. One can imagine similar things in humans. And so that begs the question, how do we measure success or what are those endpoints and how are we getting it all wrong? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and that Substack I wrote was related to concerns I have about artificial intelligence, AI, and oh my goodness, it seems to be, generating these responses better than my brain, and it feels threatening. And it was comforting to me to go back and say, wait a minute. If AI had a baby, I don't think it would know what to do. And it's just what I was mentioning in that video, the ability to pay attention not just to yourself, which is quite overwhelming, feeding yourself and taking care of yourself, but this entirely different organism, that's a huge thing for a brain to do. And that care, I think, marks the intelligence and the flexibility. And our brains are probably where they are because of all this interaction and care and such. And of course, today we need moms to carry on the species. So incredibly important. And I hope that it can shift, and it's not just our research, to show that it's shifting in really amazing ways that are probably related to intelligence. But this contributes to policies about if it's important, what we were saying or sharing Dr. Noble's work about poverty, just what we're seeing with those rats that didn't know what to do when the resources were low. So moms that don't have support and resources, a lot can go wrong. And any policy we have to provide that support will change biology of future generations. So the more we can think about this differently and educate, it's hard in this country, educating people are making the laws, but it's incredibly important for that.
So can I ask a follow-up question until somebody, and if nobody is asking any questions? So you tested, or the professor at Columbia tested poverty, or you tested poverty in different ways as well.
Mhm.
How much can we, and yes, having resources is better, but if we look at the history of humans or any animal, I mean, it's not all free ride. There are stresses, different kinds of stresses, on
Mhm.
average, I mean, stress is normal to a certain extent, of course. We're not talking about extreme. And so how can we take that into consideration? What is the normal average kind of stress that we can say, and then try to understand how the brain copes with the stress? Or that would, I mean, would you just,
Yeah,
yeah, how would
it's
you do
so
that?
complicated. And, she looking at poverty, that's hitting a lot of different things. You're living where there's unrest, danger, violence, lack of education. Stress that's another area that we do research with. And at one level, it's incredibly important. We don't want to not have stress. It tells us, like a fever tells us, oh, there's something going on with our body. We need to orient, direct to take care of that. Anxiety, stress does that as well. It's just when it's chronic
Hmm.
and there's no way to turn it off. Now, people who are in high SES situations have that. So privilege, poverty. So regardless of where you are with resources, one of the best, I don't know, remedies or antidotes for stress, what my rats tell me, is if you can gain a sense of control where it doesn't look like you're or feel like you're helpless. So to have confidence that maybe you can provide resources by working, or that you have social relationships to help, or that you're working on learning things yourself so that you can, I think the most critical aspect, the way I look at intelligence, is flexibility. The world's not going to stay the same. So if we can engage, so if something changes, we feel more confident. Um, that gives us a sense of control, and the more sense of control we have, and we don't always control our sense of control. I know a lot of us are in different environments and we can't change some of the things that we want to change, but even within those constraints, maybe there are little things we can do. But I have a question. I'm interested in your take, something that's concerning me about maternal brains in our current society. My daughter, I don't know if you know this, but my youngest daughter, Skylar, she's working on her residency in OBGYN. So
Mhm.
my baby girl is delivering babies. And she mentioned, so what is going on with, we have these drugs, the GLP-1 drugs in this country for weight loss. Are
Mhm.
they popular and accessible there, the GLP-1 agonists?
They are, and people use it for weight loss more than for diabetes these days, although
Right.
it was supposed to be for diabetes. It's pretty expensive, and most insurance don't cover it, but people are, it is around.
Yeah, so this is my concern. And she was telling me, she said, Mom, these women are coming in and they have these surprise pregnancies because they're on these drugs. They thought they were infertile, but then they lose weight and they're able. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I started asking these
Hmm.
questions. Well, do they stay on these drugs? And it's thought that maybe 1 in 8 people in this country are on these drugs. Do they stay on these drugs through pregnancy? Is that okay? Through lactation? She said, we really don't know that much about it. There's no real regulations. So there's some research coming out to suggest that those drugs, they also influence like people's drug addiction and gambling, and that's great.
Hmm.
But what it tells me is that it's influencing the brain's reward system. And if
Hmm.
you remember on that slide, a key part of maternal behavior is brain
Yes.
reward. What if women who are opting to take this drug to lose their baby weight are compromising the brain's reward center that could influence their relationship with their offspring? We know nothing about this. So we're
Mm.
in touch with the National Institute of Health here, and they said, no, we don't know if, what role that would play in maternal behavior, but yet they're writing the prescription. So just another example of how vulnerable, the maternal brain is. We don't need to just play around with things. So that scares me, and we're trying to write a grant with the Women's Center at Virginia Commonwealth University. Maybe it plays no role, but if it's influencing your rewards with food, with gambling, with other drugs, some people are reporting they feel kind of meh, not as excited about things because remember, those babies are a huge investment. We need all the motivation to take care of them as they're crying through the night. And we
Yes.
just want to sleep. So that's a concern and an example of how we need to be aware of all these systems and value them.
That's amazing. I mean, my first comment is and this is to my students, how important it is to just make observations, right?
Mhm.
And to pick on things that appear to be innocent, but no, then you make the connections. And that's what a scientist is. It's seeing what everybody sees, but thinking what no one has thought and making the connections. And that's why
I
there's,
like that.
right? Yeah. And there should be more, I think, dialogue between physicians and scientists, because physicians see symptoms, may recognize patterns, but they're not biologists, so they wouldn't even think. I mean, it would be an interesting thing, and that's it. But when
Mhm.
they start sharing it with, like us biologists, we start putting two and two together and saying, wait a minute,
Right.
there could be something here, and we happen and stumble upon a new discovery. Because my students think everything's been discovered, and here we are discovering new things every day. So that's my
Yeah.
initial reaction, but this is fascinating because yeah, I read about the addiction reduction,
Yeah.
the side thing, and now you're helping us tie it with taking care of kids. Oh my God, that is terrible.
Well, there was just an article that came out in Nature, a team at the University of Virginia, and they were showing with mice that it influences dopaminergic function. These drugs do. So it really looks like it's hitting the brain's reward system. And there's a lot of money being made with these drugs. So
Oh,
we just need to
yes.
make sure that we're also balancing the care and caution. Because most moms would, as you said, they wouldn't think, oh, this may compromise the relationship with my offspring. It may not. I don't want to
Yeah.
alarm people. I just think we need to know more about it before people have that option
Yes.
of taking these drugs during that time.
Absolutely. We have a question from a student in the chat, and then I have
Okay.
another question. She
Oh,
says,
okay.
Rawan, thank you for asking. Is there a link between puberty and brain development in girls?
Well, puberty and brain development in everyone. So it's like a storm as those hormones are coming on board, different between the males and the females. But um, that's not my area of expertise, but it is certainly changing the brain, and we just need to be mindful and careful that, understanding how this is happening and the brain, because it's changing from the womb to the tomb, every new developmental stage is different. So it's beginning to prepare the female for care and other things. That's not all women do, but and it's interesting if you look at juvenile male rats, there's a time period where they are very big nurturers of other little pups,
Mm.
as if it was like a little bleep, like, no, we don't need to, to develop that in you, but you have the possibility of that happening. And the males didn't talk so much about that, but they seem to require a little bit more real-time FaceTime acquired,
Mm.
where the moms, you really can't learn how to be a mom. A couple of nights of not feeding your child, they're not there. So it's very interesting that the brain has to teach itself through this marination, so that it's responding to these cues, and you're kind of addicted, where the males are a little bit slower to come online with that. I digress from the question about adolescence, but something that's really interesting is processed food, and some of the way we're eating is kind of accelerating the body's reproductive development and adolescence at a time where the brain may not be as developed. And that could lead to some interesting mental challenges for young girls where that is happening. Puberty seems to be happening earlier than it used to. So it's something to be mindful of. Interesting question. And I need to do
Yeah.
more research on that. Yeah.
No, thank you, Rawand, and thank you for the answer, Kelly. By the way, Rawand, last semester we had a talk by a professor at University of Toronto who talked about adolescence and stress
Mhm.
and mental health and hormones. So it's on our YouTube channel, which I'll send
Oh,
everybody,
yeah.
so
I'd like
they
to
can watch.
listen to
Yeah,
that.
I'll
Yeah.
share that with you.
Yeah.
And also just to comment, Kelly wrote a chapter in a book I had edited, right?
Mhm.
Right, women from reimagining success from women
Yeah, I love it.
around
So
the
we're
world.
co-authors.
Yeah, we're co-authors. And also try to we can share the book with the students as well, because your chapter was about the maternal brain as
Yeah, it
well.
was. It was the mother of all brains. So
The
I
mother
used
of all
that as a
brains. Yeah.
springboard for this talk
Yes.
and my Substack launch.
Yes,
So
amazing. And I'll share the Substack link as well, maybe even in the YouTube channel's caption.
yeah, so there's
We
one more question about,
Yes. Hmm.
is the brain able to recover from early life stress to the environment? Absolutely. I know of no evidence to suggest that it's stuck. It may be more challenging, but even if you look at the traditional rodent enriched environments where you're looking at neuroplasticity, even the old rats that have been sitting in a cage for 2 years and they're overweight, and they can get new connections and synapses. So we may need to be creative in the therapies. I know our therapies, we're just talking about drugs, have been mostly focused on drugs, but I really love more experiential types of therapies, cognitive behavioral therapies, and I have a whole something called effort-based rewards, and where even hobbies, where you gain that sense of control if you're doing something that you like, can start to change your perspective and distract you. So yes, we want to try to avoid trauma, our kids, but change is there. And some of our new research is on hope and how the brain is so activated during hope. And our driving rats, I don't know if you see our driving rat, they were so excited to drive every day. I thought, I want to study that. I've been studying stress and trauma and such. And so it's a scary thing for a serious-minded neuroscientist to think about joy in a rat or hope. But having hope and is important. And I'm beginning to think that in this country, I don't know if you're familiar with adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. So when children go to the doctor, pediatricians will score them. So if they've lost a parent or parents in jail, or something, a divorce, that counts as an adverse childhood experience. And there's a strong correlation between the number of ACEs and later health problems, cancer, depression, and such. But I wonder if you ask a child what it's looking forward to, and if that child has nothing that he or she or they are looking forward to, I think that's a big red flag as well. And one of my favorite studies that I stumbled across lately, and I have a new TED Talk, Rana, I can send you the link
Oh, please.
about
Yes.
this in November. But it was in Israel, and they had children who were we have there, some places have Make-A-Wish foundations. So a child that has a terminal illness, this organization asks them what they want to do, meet a celebrity, go to Disney, and they try to make that happen for them. And so once they were told that their wish was going to be granted, they followed their medical, they still had the illness, cancer, but their blood pressure and other medical markers, as well as their mental health. And there was an improvement over the next few months as they were anticipating their wish coming true, compared to the group that hadn't been assigned this wish yet. And when you talk about wishes and hope, that seems very fluffy and light. But when you're looking forward to something, it's really, it changes perspective. So we're training our rats to look forward to things and looking at optimism, and it's changing cognitive strategies. And that's highly correlated with some health indices as well. So if we can interject hope in any of these, and Rana, maybe a closing story is a story that you told me when you were working with Syrian families and they were struggling about whether or not to have children. You told me the story of one family that said, no, no children. These are too difficult circumstances. But then a baby was born and all the hope that was attached to that child. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so moving. I'll never forget the description of the grandparents when that baby came, giving them hope and something to look forward to. And actually, I just want to build on what you said about hope and optimism. Most of the research, as you mentioned, is all about stress and anxiety and how
Mhm.
important hope is. And actually, in your book, Well Grounded, you talk about even the placebo when you take a medicine and how we don't understand that connection
Yeah.
between our brains
Yeah.
when we have that hope and how that affects our physiology in ways that up to now science doesn't really look deeply into because they don't
Yeah.
understand those connections. But we have so many testimonials, and you're showing that in your research. But I just want to allude to my new research project is about sumud, which is the behavior we see in the families in Gaza as they survive this ongoing genocide, and how they survive and they thrive. And the question is, has anybody looked at not at the negative, because we know that exists and there's a lot of research, but like you said, how are we studying how and what are the mechanisms that they're employing, whether it's innate or they make them to help them survive. So that kind of behavior of survival is called sumud in Arabic. And I've done some preliminary research and we've identified three pillars. And you actually said them when you were talking about your mice. Well, the three pillars are meaning making, so that
Uh-huh.
the moms or the parents or the families, they make meaning of what's happening, and that helps them cope because they
Mhm.
connect it either to a cause or to faith or something like that, and that helps, and that's innate, I think, for us to do meaning making. The
Mhm.
second one was social relations.
Mhm.
having family members to help you, support you, to withstand or create a buffer when you are exposed to those different traumas. And lastly, which you also mentioned, is this agency, this self-taking control that I'm going to wake up, I'm going to cook, I'm going to find a place to put my kids. And that helps your brain not just, become paralyzed or become negative, but keeps it going,
Mhm.
and that helps you to survive. So we've identified those three, which you just kind of talked about. And I'd love, maybe we'll carry that conversation
Yeah, I want to
later
hear more
because,
about that.
yeah.
That sounds fascinating. But I think we have, trauma and stress that is incredibly important. But I think that these positive emotions have not been considered serious science in the past. But there is an up to, there's a positive psychology that's been around for a couple of decades, the science of flourishing, resilience. It's harder to get kind of the animal models, but this flexibility, coping, appraisal, and these are things that can be taught to some. There's some innate responses, but we can teach people. I think just learning about how the brain works, neuroeducation, um, that helps us understand, okay, it's perfectly normal for me to be stressed, but then my brain's going to do this. And if I can engage in this, if I can start this hobby, if I can talk to people, that's going to start to change those circuits. So we need to improve our user manual knowledge about the brain. But I would love to learn more about what you're seeing with that population, Rana. It's amazing.
Yeah, we will definitely follow up. So I know we went over time, but this has been fascinating. And we have one last question from one of our students, Hala.
Okay.
She's asking, I would like to know your opinion on the term brain rot that is being used and to what extent it is true. This is like jargon.
So,
Maybe
in
I
what
don't know.
context are you hearing brain rot? Just not maternal, just
هالة يا انه باي مناطق يعني شو المناسبات اللي people يعني بيستعملوا هذا المصطلح.
إنه صار دكتورة متداول جدا إنه مصطلح تعفن الدماغ، خصوصا إنه إحنا حاليا نستخدم يعني الأجهزة بكثرة، وصار
اه
تركيز أقل، نسيان كثير، فكلهم صاروا يربطوه بمصطلح تعفن الدماغ. فبدي أعرف إنه هل المصطلح فعلا واقعي ولأي درجة واقعيته يعني.
شكرا على سؤالك. Okay, so the context is using technology and devices and instruments that people's brains are rotting because of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that. Well, our brains evolved to engage with the world around us, and we're still carrying around those brains of our ancestors. So, um, AI, it has, and using devices, this is great. I mean, it would take all week for me to get over there to meet. I would love to meet you and your students in person. But this is a great second choice. So there are lots of positives, but if we're spending a majority of our time just engaging the visual and not building agency, as we're talking about, we're doing things, something as simple as cooking, planning a meal, enjoying it. I think it should not take the place. And here now we have relationship bots, and people are having relationships with AI. That's just kind of condescending for the brain. That is not engaging for the brain. So being smart enough, intelligent enough to figure out how it enhances our ability and knowledge, but still, we really need to still value just what you were saying, social relationships and such, and interactions in a 3D world. And exercise, is incredibly important too. And when I sit in this chair too long, I can feel the impact of that. We need to get, well, almost 80% of all of our brain cells, the neurons, are involved or they're in the cerebellum that's involved in motor coordination. So if you're not moving, you're not using your brain to its fullest capacity. We get all excited about the cerebral cortex and thinking and problem solving, and that's important too. But moving is truly the way to engage, important way to engage our brain and moving in new ways. I drag my husband to dance lessons. We're horrible at it, but it's hard, and we're trying to figure out, how to do that. So, walking, nature. So let's not forget what our ancestors, what really was the backdrop for our brains to develop, and take advantage of all of it. But I think it can atrophy, it can shrink if we're not using aspects of it. And we're not building reserves for when we get older and maybe Alzheimer's or something like that comes on board. if we have a rich inventory, what we call cognitive reserve, it may give us another 5 years or so before those symptoms are going to emerge. So neuroplasticity, it's a great thing if we interact and engage our brains. So good question. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Kelly, for giving
This
us your
was a
time
pleasure.
and
It's always a
sharing.
delight to see you and now
Same
to
here.
meet through Zoom your students. They're very fortunate
Yes, thank you.
to meet.
And thank you to my students. And we had with us Professor Arwa, who asked you the first question.
Yes,
She's an
thank you. Yeah.
immunologist. And we hope to see you again next time
Yeah.
around, maybe next year
Yeah.
for the students, but then maybe see you in person earlier or sooner. Take
Yeah.
care, and
Okay, you
post this
too.
up, and
You
I'll
have a
ask
good
you for the
evening. We're
links.
just getting started on our day here, but you
Yeah.
have a good
Enjoy the rest of the day.
bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye. Assalamu alaikum.